If you've ever wondered why a chemical also used to make yoga mats and shoe soles is allowed in ordinary American bread, or why the bright pink color of the salmon on your plate often comes straight out of a factory additive, and many more secrets besides, stay with us. Chlorine-washed chicken. In the United States, poultry is routinely rinsed at the end of processing in a chlorine bath, or a similar antimicrobial spray, to kill surface bacteria like salmonella. It is cheap, effective, and completely legal. The European Union sees it very differently. Since the late 1990s, it has banned the import of chlorine-washed chicken, not because the rinse itself is clearly dangerous, but because European regulators argue it can be used to paper over dirty, low-welfare conditions earlier in the process. Their rule demands hygiene at every step, from the farm to the plant, rather than a chemical fix at the end. The chlorinated chicken became one of the most bitter sticking points in trade talks between America and Europe, a small rinse standing in for a much larger disagreement about how food should be made. Artificial food dyes. The brilliant reds, yellows, and blues in American candy, cereal, and sports drinks usually come from synthetic dyes made from petroleum, with names like Red 40 and Yellow 5. In the United States, they fill thousands of everyday products, brightly and legally. Europe treats them with far more suspicion. After a British study linked several of these dyes to hyperactivity in some children, the European Union began in 2010 requiring any food containing them to carry a warning label noting a possible effect on children's attention. Faced with that label, many brands simply reformulated, switching to colors drawn from beet, paprika, or turmeric. The same candy often exists in two versions, one artificially colored for America, one naturally colored for Europe, a quiet split running right down the middle of the global snack aisle. Hormone-treated beef. Across most of the American cattle industry, animals are given growth hormones to grow bigger and faster on less feed, a practice regulators there consider safe. The European Union has banned it outright since 1989, refusing both to use the hormones and to import beef raised with them, citing unresolved questions about their effect on human health. The disagreement set off one of the longest trade wars in modern history, with billions of dollars in tariffs traded back and forth for decades. To this day, American beef raised with hormones cannot legally be sold in Europe, and the fight over it has never fully ended, a dispute settled less by science than by national nerve. Titanium dioxide. This bright white powder is one of the most common additives in the world, used to make candy, frosting, chewing gum, and sauces look whiter and glossier. It is the same brilliant white pigment found in sunscreen, paint, and toothpaste, and in food it turns up in everything from the coating on chewing gum to powdered donuts and coffee creamer. For decades it was considered harmless, and in the United States it still is. Then European regulators took a closer look. In 2022, the European Union banned titanium dioxide as a food additive, after its Food Safety Agency concluded it could no longer rule out that the tiny particles might damage genetic material inside cells. American regulators reviewed the same science and disagreed, keeping it legal. So a white-coated candy sold on one side of the Atlantic is a banned substance on the other. The exact same product judged completely differently by two sets of experts reading the exact same studies. Ractopamine pork. Much of the pork raised in the United States comes from pigs given ractopamine, a drug added to their feed in the final weeks to build lean muscle instead of fat. It works by mimicking a stress hormone, and traces of it remain in the meat. The United States judges those traces harmless, but around 160 countries do not, and have banned the drug, including the entire European Union, China, and Russia. Their concern is partly human health and partly animal welfare, since the drug has been linked to stress and lameness in the pigs themselves. The result is that a pork chop perfectly ordinary in an American supermarket would be illegal to sell across most of the planet, an everyday cut of meat that most of the world will not allow. Brominated vegetable oil. For decades, a handful of citrus-flavored American sodas contained brominated vegetable oil, or BVO, an emulsifier that keeps the flavor evenly mixed instead of floating to the top. The catch is the bromine in it, an element also used in flame retardants, which can build up in the body over time. Europe and Japan banned it from food long ago, and studies raising health concerns slowly pushed American makers to phase it out on their own. Finally, in 2024, United States regulators caught up and revoked their approval of it entirely, ending decades of the additive sitting legally on American shelves while it was forbidden elsewhere. It is one of the rare cases on this list where America eventually moved to close the gap, banning something Europe had rejected 2 generations earlier. Recombinant growth hormone milk. In the United States, dairy cows are often injected with a genetically engineered hormone, known as RBGH or RBST, to boost how much milk they produce. American regulators approved it in the 1990s and consider the milk indistinguishable from any other. Europe, Canada, Japan, and Australia all refuse to allow it, banning the hormone over concerns about the health of the cows, which can suffer more udder infections, and lingering questions about the milk itself. The split means a glass of ordinary American milk may come from a process outlawed across most of the wealthy world. So many American shoppers grew uneasy that a large share of the country's milk is now labeled hormone-free by choice, a case where consumers, more than regulators, pushed back against something the law still allows. Potassium bromate. To make bread rise higher and bake up springy and white, many American bakeries add potassium bromate to their flour. It works well and has been used for a century, but it is also classified as a possible human carcinogen, and if too much survives the baking, traces remain in the finished loaf. For that reason, it is banned in the European Union, the United Kingdom, Canada, Brazil, and beyond. In the United States, it remains legal nationwide, though the state of California has moved to outlaw it, and many bakers have dropped it voluntarily. Most European bread instead relies on gentler dough strengtheners like vitamin C, which do a similar job without the same worry. It is a strange divide, the very same sandwich loaf baked with an ingredient that is routine in one country and forbidden as a cancer risk in the next. Azodicarbonamide. Here is the one that became a scandal. Azodicarbonamide is a dough conditioner that makes commercial bread soft and springy, and it is perfectly legal in the United States. It is also the same chemical used to put the bubbles in foamed plastics like yoga mats and the soles of sneakers. In 2014, a food blogger pointed this out, and the image of the yoga mat chemical hiding in fast food buns spread so fast that a major sandwich chain publicly promised to remove it. The European Union and Australia had already banned it from food years earlier, partly because it can break down into compounds linked to cancer. Nothing about the science changed that week, but the simple, unforgettable comparison did what decades of chemistry could not, and turned an obscure additive into a household worry. BHA and BHT. These two closely related preservatives are added to countless American products, from breakfast cereal to chips to chewing gum, to stop the fats inside from turning rancid. They are cheap and they work, and in the United States they are widely permitted. Europe is far more cautious. One of them, BHA, has been flagged by international researchers as a possible human carcinogen based on animal studies, and the European Union restricts both preservatives tightly, allowing them only in far smaller amounts and fewer foods than America does. Many European makers avoid them altogether in favor of natural preservatives like vitamin E. It is less a clean ban than a difference of degree, but the effect is the same. A cereal box that lists these preservatives in America often carries none at all in Europe. Farmed salmon. The rich pink color that makes salmon look fresh and healthy is not always what it seems. Wild salmon turn pink from eating tiny crustaceans, but farmed salmon, raised on grain-based feed, would otherwise grow up a dull, unappetizing gray. So farmers add a pigment, often a synthetic one called conthazanthin, to the feed, tinting the flesh a market-friendly pink to a shade chosen from a color card. The pigment is legal in the United States, but Europe restricts how much can be used, after studies linked high doses to deposits in the human retina. Salmon farming carries other concerns Europe regulates more tightly, from antibiotics to crowding. The result is that the very color that signals health and freshness on the American fish counter is, in part, a carefully dialed-in additive. Olestra. In the 1990s, an American company invented a miracle for the diet-obsessed, a fat that added no fat. Olestra was a synthetic oil designed to pass straight through the body without being absorbed, letting people eat fried chips with none of the calories. It was approved in the United States and rushed into fat-free snacks. There was a catch. Passing through undigested, it could cause cramping and worse, and it swept fat-soluble vitamins out of the body along with it, so products had to carry an unappetizing warning label. Britain and Canada never allowed it at all. The snacks quietly faded from American shelves as the novelty wore off, but Olestra remains legal in the United States to this day, a reminder that a food can be technically approved and still be something much of the world simply refused to touch. Diphenylamine, a shiny American apple in winter, may have been picked more than a year before it reaches the shelf, and to survive that long in storage without developing ugly brown blotches, many are treated with a chemical called diphenylamine, or DPA. It is applied to the fruit to prevent a storage disorder called scald, and in the United States it is standard practice. Europe took a harder line. In 2012, the European Union effectively banned diphenylamine, after regulators found they lacked the data to rule out the formation of small amounts of potentially harmful compounds on the treated fruit, and sharply restricted how much could appear on imported apples. So the flawless, glossy apple that looks like the very picture of natural health can carry a residue that Europe decided it would rather do without. Bleached flour. Fresh milled flour is faintly yellow and needs time to age before it bakes well. To skip that wait, American mills often bleach and age flour chemically in minutes, using agents like benzoyl peroxide or chlorine gas to whiten it and improve its texture at once. The result is the bright white flour and soft, uniform cakes many American shoppers expect. The European Union and the United Kingdom ban the bleaching of flour entirely, treating those whitening chemicals as unnecessary additives with no place in a basic staple. British flour is left to age the slow, natural way, or simply sold unbleached. It is one more everyday ingredient, the plain bag of white flour in the cupboard, that turns out to be made by two completely different sets of rules on two sides of an ocean. Atrazine. The last item is not something added to food, but something sprayed across the land it grows on. Atrazine is a weed killer, one of the most heavily used in the United States, dosed onto millions of acres of corn every year, from where it washes into streams and drinking water. It is a suspected endocrine disruptor, able to interfere with hormones at very low levels, and studies have tied it to deformities in frogs. The European Union moved to ban atrazine back in 2004, largely because it kept turning up in groundwater at levels the continent would not accept. In America, it remains one of the most common chemicals found in the water supply. It is a fitting place to end, because it captures the whole pattern, the same substance treated as an acceptable tool on one side of the Atlantic and an unacceptable risk on the other. Almost nothing on this list is a simple story of poison versus safety. Most of these additives are legal in America because its regulators judged them acceptable, often only in small amounts, and banned or restricted in Europe because a different set of regulators, reading much of the same science, decided the risk was not worth taking. The word safe, it turns out, hides a choice, and that choice is made differently on each side of the ocean. Let us know in the comments which food question we should dig into next.